we have a special presentation right now that we'd like to make. Kind of a surprise presentation, if I get my glasses on. Okay. There is a woman here who is both a producer and a director, social service person, won many awards, and has dignified the women's movement in Pittsburgh by putting together an exhibit that has been on display and is now housed as an exhibit of Western Pennsylvania women who were in the movement back in the 60s and 70s. Patricia Ulbrich, will you come forward, please? Pat has really, she really put it together with the women, and I'm going to have her take 2 minutes and tell you the women that they have done. Come on, come on, come on. Don't be shy. I saw the exhibit one of the first times that it was in play at the convention center, when we had to walk and walk and walk and walk until we saw the videos of the women that they were honoring in that exhibit. It is called In Sisterhood, and this is Pat Ulbrich, who will tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, thank you. Go. Okay. I have a pretty strong voice. Can you hear me? Yeah, I don't need this, thank you. I really don't like mics. There you go. Well, this is a surprise, but let's see if I can do this in 2 minutes. In Sisterhood, the women's movement in Pittsburgh was initially funded by a grant from the Community Connections Initiative, which happened about 15 years ago when they were celebrating the anniversary of the region. And they had a series of grants, and I received one of the grants to my shock, because I boldly claimed that I was going to do a history of the women's movement, which I then proceeded to do. We have interviewed 85 people, some of them men, but mostly women, about their experiences as feminist activists in Pittsburgh, 68 to about 88. And this was a breakthrough community in the country. We had some leading movements, leading issues here, including a successful suit against the press about sex-segregated want ads. So I wanted to honor women who weren't what were considered the leaders in Pittsburgh. But these were the other leaders. These were the radical leaders. And we recorded oral history, sometimes up to 6 hours, with these individuals about their amazing lives, the organizations they started, and the things that they accomplished, and including influencing both Pennsylvania state and the United States women's movement. 3 of women from Pittsburgh were presidents of National Now, which sometimes isn't considered very radical, but it was the main organization. It was an important organization in those days, still is. Anyway, I wanted that information to be available in Pittsburgh. And so I have created an archive. I said, give me your stuff. And I have boxes of memorabilia and records about the women's movement in Pittsburgh. And including, I videotaped the interviews. And all of that will be at the University of Pitt archive, probably starting in the fall. So there will be announcements about that, and you can all, if you're so inclined, go over there and check it out. So thank you, and thank you too.
I'd like to bring your attention to the program at this point, and just want to make sure that you're familiar with those who are supporting this event today. Nancy Bernstein could not be with us today, but she is the scholarship sponsor, and we gave out a number of scholarships. So we thank her. Table sponsors, Bonnie, Suzanne Thomas, down there, and the Greater Pittsburgh Business and Professional Women. Yeah, there they are. You know what, if you want to join a fantastic organization in the area, that's the one to join, the Greater Pittsburgh Business and Professional Women. Most of us, Kathy Elliott is here today with us, and we are thankful for that with some of her students. It was Kathy's mother, Gwen, who brought most of us into the Greater Pittsburgh Business and Professional Women. And then after Gwen passed, the example of the women that she brought in brings in more. There's Marlise nodding over there. She quit us for a while.
Returning, 'cause Gwen did bring me in initially, back in the 80s.
Exactly. Yep, Renee. So anyway, that's a great organization, service organization, and the honorary sponsors. We thank them very, very much. Judge Keita Bridges, Julie Capone for judge, and you've met most of these. Glass Kaleidoscope, where Marsha Wychick made all of the wonderful stained glass that you will see in a little while. Attorney William Goodrich, and Goodrich, yes, and Goodrich and Geist, who made us honorary sponsor in honor of his wife, Beth Lazara, the judge who was on the panel this afternoon. Amanda Green Hawkins for judge, Jamie Hickton for judge, Alan Levine, thank you very much, Alan, always here with your recording, thank you. A friend, Monty McIntyre, who could not be here but wanted to support the organization. Brian Neft for judge, Jackie O'Bara for judge, Michelle Xanacola for judge, and Judge Tiffany Sizemore. So we thank you all for supporting Celebrate and Share. And knowing that this year we are sharing with the Pennsylvania Women's Hall of Achievement so that we have some seed money to put that 2026 calendar together. God, that sounds so awful, 2026. But it's true. If you haven't looked at the calendars, please, they're on the table up there, a number of them. And I just got a note from a woman who is in charge of that Pittsburgh Walk. I don't know if you're familiar with that in the Strip District. Polinsky, what's her first name? Polinsky Johnson. And I sent her a calendar because we were talking about that. And she wrote back and said it was a wonderful idea. It was put together very well. And we should be very proud of it. So when the calendars come out and we have that event in August, we hope that you will join us then. And for only, this is my pitch, my first pitch of my two. If you want to be a sponsor for one of the months of the calendar, write a check for $500 and we will put your name on that month of the calendar. And I hope that some of you take us up on that. And the second thing I'm going to say, because the panel is coming up, is we have a lot of judge candidates here today, and in any election, campaigns are expensive, is all I have to say. And so please, choose 1, 2, 3, 8, depending on your means, pull out your checkbook or go to the donate button and contribute to the person that you want to contribute to, because campaigns do cost a lot of money. With that, I would like to bring up Selena Schmidt. There you are. And Selena will call our judges to the table.
Well, since you've already been very briefly introduced, if I could have our panel come up and we'll do a little different kind of learning more about each of them. We are so incredibly fortunate to have an extraordinary, just extraordinary panel of justices, and to have them all be our local justices. A particular honor that they're all women is amazing in and of itself. What I want to do today is to help give everybody a chance to get to know a little bit more about these incredible people, about the work that they do, and how you can help make sure that we keep having this unbelievable talent in our justice system. So I'm going to start off, I could read their bios. I strongly encourage you to go online and see how incredibly accomplished these people are. Just utterly amazing, the things that they have already done. But instead of just reading off incredible degrees, incredible things that they've done already professionally, I want to ask them to take a little moment and go a little deeper for you. You can think about moments in your life that really stand out, or a person, or a thing that happened, or something that you read that said, oh, this either changed or affirmed the direction I'm going. Maybe it was something that came out of nowhere and all of a sudden you're like, oh, so look back, that is how I am where I am. And what I'd like to do is to start our panel that way and ask Judge Sizemore if she would kick us off and tell us about that.
Thank you. Again, my name is Tiffany Sizemore. I'm a native Pittsburgher, and I lived here until I graduated from high school. Then I left for 17 years and moved back in 2012 to work at the Public Defender's Office here and eventually do some other things, including this. So thank you. So outside of sort of the professional reasons that I became a judge, I think back to my childhood. I was raised by strong women, stand on the shoulders of strong women in my family, my mother and grandmother, great-grandmother, and I was essentially raised as a humanitarian, raised that the expectation would be that whatever I did with my life, it would be about giving back, it would be about moving our country, our society forward in a positive way. And I think that is one of my big sort of stepping stones or pushes that got me to this point. I also went to an HBCU for law school with an extremely rich civil rights history. And again, I think the expectation was set that the work that you do needs to have meaning. And I went to Antioch College for undergrad, and our motto is, be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity, Horace Mann. And so that is sort of the tradition that I've always, the educational and familial tradition that I was raised in, and I think that's what ultimately brought me to this point. I'm a juvenile court judge, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a while, what that means and what I do on a day-to-day basis. But I work with kids and families every day, and I think those are some of the guiding principles that that help me as I make decisions.
Thank you. I love being on panels like this because then I learn about my colleagues and my friends, things that I never knew. So I appreciate hearing Judge Sizemore's story. I am the opposite of a native Pittsburgher. I am not only a transplant, but I'm an immigrant, and I came to the US when I was 7 years old. And so when I had to make a decision of what career I wanted to go into, I picked being a lawyer without really understanding what it meant. And although initially when I came here, I was considered to be slow and put in a slow class because I had a Jamaican accent, they soon discovered that I was not slow and I was in fact bright. And having that in the New York school system helped to give me opportunities that other students who were brighter than me did not have. So by the time I got to high school, which was John Jay High School for Criminal Justice, in New York, a lot of the schools are specialized. I was able to do things like be on a mock trial and to be in a leadership program where teachers took special interest in me and allowed me to do things like model Congress. And so being a part of a group of children who we were not expected to have dreams. We were not expected to go to college or even to go to higher education. Having people pour into us, I think, helped me to always give back. So in my leadership program, I would do things even in high school, like organizing blood drives and giving back, and it just has been a part of my growth and through college at Slippery Rock, and that's what got me to Pennsylvania. As far as becoming a judge, through my whole journey of being a lawyer, once I figured out I belonged in this profession, because in the beginning, many women of color do not believe that they belong. Once I decided I'm here and I belong, I began giving back to the Bar Association and to the community. And there was an incident that occurred with a sitting Court of Common Pleas judge that involved race. And while it was scary, I felt like I needed to speak out. And by that time, I already was considered a leader in the Bar Association and had started some diversity, equity, inclusion programming, and was helping other lawyers to start their own business and to run for judge. And I was told it was a bad idea to speak out, but I did it with the help of other people like Lena Bryan Henderson and other leaders, where we thought we had, this was a crucial moment. From that moment on, it was just perfect timing. There were 10 seats open and people had rumors already that I was going to run for judge. So I'm like, okay, we'll fulfill this. So, that's kind of that constant, kind of what Judge Sizemore said, that thought process that not only do I achieve, but in my achievement, I'm always giving back. And that's been the path, and that's the path that I intend to continue for my entire career.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you mind if I stand up? I'm sorry. I don't think well when I sit. Okay? So I'm going to stand up. All right?
Do you do that in trial? Do you
I try to stand up as much as I can in the courtroom, but lean forward, whatever. So I'm Beth Lazara. I am a native of Pittsburgher, with the exception of 3 days. I was an Army brat for an entire 3 days. My dad was in the Army. I was born in Massachusetts. He almost had to re-enlist because I was late. And we wouldn't have had health insurance. But then we came to Pittsburgh, and I've been here ever since. I grew up on Pittsburgh's north side. I'm a city girl. Grew up on the north side, went to Oliver High School, very proud graduate of the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Went to the University of Pittsburgh on a full paid academic scholarship coming out of Oliver High School. Very proud of that. And then went to Pitt Law School. So I stayed in Pittsburgh. And when I stayed in Pittsburgh and I became a lawyer, I decided that I was going to do personal injury work, which when I first told everybody that, they kept telling me to put running shoes on. And, the ambulance chaser chokes that are really bad. And I actually have tennis shoes on today. I apologize, but I hurt my knee. My thought of doing the personal injury work was, this is the way to directly help people change their lives. And so when you have somebody who has been hurt, who has been injured through no fault of their own, and you're able to represent them, advocate for them, and actually get them something that makes their life better and puts them back in the position that harm took them away from, it's really a great feeling. So that was sort of what I was doing in the law. And I was moving along through the law. I was working with my husband, Billy Goodrich, who's here, and everything seemed to be going fine. And I'm going to very directly answer the question. The thing that pushed me into the law, into running for judge, was one of the worst experiences of my life. Okay, I'm a runner. I'm running on the north side. I'm running along California Avenue in Brighton Heights, and I see a van pull up in front of me, and I'm not thinking anything of it. I just keep going. But I see the guy's head in the van, and I think I better move slightly because I don't want him to bang into me when he gets out of the van. Well, he wasn't going to get out of the van to do work. He was going to get out of the van to try to put me in it. And he wheeled around, and he grabbed me by the arms, and he pushed me, and he tried to push me into that van. And it was the worst thing in the world. When I touched my hand inside the van, I thought, if I'm in that van, I'm dead. I'm raped, I'm murdered, I'm taken from this scene, nobody will ever find me again. And so I started fighting. And I kicked, and I hit, and I screamed, and he threw me on the ground, and I had a great basketball-sized bruise on my hip from where he bounced me off the pavement. But I kept screaming until some neighbors, thank God, turned on the lights. And he pushed me away and said, "Run, bitch, run." And he turned around very slowly and he drove off. Okay? And I was a mess, as you can imagine, right? And I went through the criminal justice system as a victim of a crime. They found the man, thank goodness, because we did a really good composite drawing of him, and they were able to find him, and they put him on trial. And I went through a trial. I testified as a witness. I'm a lawyer. I'm scared to death. Worst experience of my life, standing up there testifying and telling my story again, which I was much worse at doing at that point in time because I was still freaked out. And he was convicted. He was convicted of attempted kidnapping of a total stranger, reckless endangerment of another person, unlawful restraint, and simple assault. Okay? Felony, attempted kidnapping. And I go to the sentencing, and I've been told by the DA's office that I need to prepare, what it's meant to me. And what it meant to me is I couldn't go into my house in the dark. I had to call people to come meet me to go in my house. When I went in my house, I had to look under every bed. I had to look in every closet because I was positive he was going to be back. Okay? And so I was scared to death. And I wrote all of those things in my impact statement. About how I walked to work in the morning carrying mace like this, and finally one of the Pittsburgh police officers who was directing traffic started walking me up to my building, okay? And I had this all prepared. It took me weeks to write this. And I stood up there to talk in front of this judge, and this judge paid no attention whatsoever to a single thing that I said. He was signing things and handing them to his tip staff. He was talking to a law clerk. He was doing anything other than looking at me and hearing my experience. And he gave this guy who did this to me 1 to 2 years in the state prison. That was it. And as we were walking out of the courtroom, I said to my husband, there are 7 seats opening up for judge this election. I'm the oldest person on the panel here. I'm in my 20th year of judge now, okay? But there were 7 seats at that time. And I looked at my husband, Billy, and I said to him, I'm going to run for one of those seats. And I didn't run for that seat so that I could slam people in the criminal division. That's where I practice now, in the criminal division, okay? I didn't run so that I could make sure everybody spent decades and decades in jail. I ran because I wanted people who came in front of me to know that they were heard. And as a judge, it is the most important thing that you can do. You hear the victims, you hear the defendants, you hear the witnesses, you listen. And I was not listened to. And that is the reason that I ran for judge. And we were successful. It was the first time we ran, and a lot of times that doesn't happen, but we ran and won the first time. I was pregnant. My daughter was born 3 weeks before the primary, so I always know how long I've been a judge because she'll be 20 this year. So that's how I know how long I've been judge. And that's the reason that prompted me to run for judge, is to make sure that every single person who comes into that courtroom has a voice, has an ability to be heard, to be listened to, and that the decision takes into account what I've heard. So that's my story.
I'll stand so people on this side of the room can see me too. So I think, like Judge Henry Taylor said, I really learned so much that you didn't know before from your colleagues. For Beth, I was in her class in law school when she was running. Wow. And didn't know that story, but I would say there are similar themes in different ways to what she shared in terms of the one thing that put me into running for judge. So when I finished law school, I did start working as a plaintiff's lawyer, but I took a pretty sharp turn unexpectedly then because I was interested in politics. And I have to know how appreciative I am of Bonnie, Joanne, many of the other women in this room, Selena, who have always stood up to support women and good candidates. And really kept networks of us together, because it still is very rare. So I was a state representative for 5 years, and then I was county controller for 10 years. Wow, I didn't realize. And during that time, some of you are somewhat familiar with this story, but my husband and I were on a trip to Detroit. We go on trips a lot for music. So we were there to see one of our favorite artists, Nas, and my husband's black and was racially profiled back at our hotel. They wouldn't let him into the room. I was asleep in bed. That unraveled to the police at the door with my husband, me following them recording. Police didn't like that. I was thrown to the ground and arrested, thrown in jail. My husband and I were charged. I was charged with 2 felonies for resisting arrest, common tactic.
We know that one.
But as with Beth said, it was encountering people throughout that evening and throughout the process of the justice system that was really, really motivating for me in different ways, because you encountered people that saw your humanity and you encountered people that really tried to put you down. And that was at every moment. So from when I was thrown in jail, there were corrections officers who were so kind and so caring, and they knew that I was worried about my husband. They were letting me go get my phone when they weren't supposed to, so that I could find those numbers. Then the next shift comes in, and I encounter the people that want to abuse their power and put you down and let you know they're in charge. And it was the same when we went through the court system. The judge that I had was reading the classifieds. And it was so appalling. And so, although I always loved the advocacy side of what I did, it was that experience that made me realize I want to be a voice in the justice system and understand that when people come before you, for most of them, regardless of what kind of matter it is, it's the worst day in their life. And they really need to be heard, and they need to be respected, and they need people that see their dignity.
What I want is for you folks to talk a little bit about what is your job. Because you're all court common pleas judges in Allegheny County, but you do very different things. Don't even get me started on all the different kinds of judges that we have and the different layers and all those things. Let's just focus on what we're doing here. This is your local justice system. What do they do? And let's kick back to you, Chelsea. What do you do?
Okay, so let me first frame it that the way that our Court of Common Pleas is organized is 4 divisions. You have what I'm in, the civil division, criminal division where Beth is, and where Nicola and Tiffany are is the family division. That's divided in 2, so where you have Nicola on the adult side and then Tiffany on the juvenile side, and then we also have a small orphans division. So when you're thinking of our Court of Common Pleas, if you think of it, even though it's a unified judicial system, we are somewhat isolated in how we deal with our matters. So for me, I'm in the civil division. One of my assignments that I would say I spend a lot of time on is landlord-tenant, because we know not just with the housing crisis that we have right now, that's a pretty voluminous part of the civil division. And then the other thing I would say that cuts across all of these divisions to think of that I don't think many people do, regardless of what division, about half of the people, if not more, that we see do not have an attorney. They're self-represented, and they really don't know the system, and they need a lot of help. So I would say in terms of time, we spend a lot of time on that. I like the fact that for me, every day is different. I get to do jury trials. I say that is my favorite part just because I will say that I think that's really the best demonstration of our democracy at work, where you have 12 people that go into a room and they take the matter so seriously. I love being able to talk to jurors after a trial and really understand what they were looking at, what they were thinking about. Those are the months that we have jury trials. For me, those are 5 months of the year, every other month, but during the summer. Other days, we're handling motions, which are kind of the smaller, more finite matters of a case. I deal with conservatorships, when people are looking to sometimes conserve property, sometimes take property. It depends on whether you're dealing with somebody who is looking to do something benevolent or perhaps in a more nefarious way. We see that too. So every day is different. I don't know if I answered the question in a way that gives you an idea of what our day-to-day is, but they really are different depending on what kind of matter. And for me in the civil division, it's all matters. So, you know, everything that doesn't fit into one of the other divisions comes through the civil division. So everything is incredibly different, and I also love that I'm always learning something new.
Thank you.
All right, so I have the criminal division, so you're all thinking Law and Order. And one of the first things I always tell jurors is it's nothing like Law and Order. If we had to like film us, it would not fit into an hour. It's not a good thing. So criminal is just what you think it is. I do adult criminal matters, okay? So that's everything from the retail theft at the Target downtown to homicides. I just had a homicide jury trial 2 weeks ago, and we had an aggravated assault last week. We have a gun case next week. So we handle all criminal adult matters. With the exception, I don't do sex offender cases. Those go to specialized judges. So we do non-jury trials where I make the decision, we do jury trials, we do motions, we do all that stuff. I am also the mental health court judge in Allegheny County, which is truly my passion. It's what I find to be most rewarding, and I sort of think, when I think back to my experience and the fact that I made it and didn't get taken and raped and murdered, you always think like, well, God must have saved me for a reason, and my reason is mental health court. I think that's why I'm here, is to minister basically to these people, not in the religious sense, but in the legal sense. I'm legally ministering to them. What we do is people that have committed crimes in Allegheny County who have mental health conditions can come into our program. And what we do is we try to make sure that they stay out of jails and prisons by making sure that they take their medications, they do their therapy, they get supports in the community sometimes from their family, sometimes the best thing we do is tell them to stay away from their families. Because sometimes the families are the problems, right? So but we try to make them build other supports in the system. If they have drug and alcohol problems, we handle those drug and alcohol problems as well. Try to get them to get the treatment that they need. And so we are one of I think there's 7 treatment courts in Allegheny County, and mental health court is one of those. I have 200 people basically under my wing. And so we see them from time to time. So every Monday you come to mental health court. It's not like a regular day in court. It'll never look like a courtroom on Mondays. We talk Star Wars. We talk pirate baseball. I tell them my husband's the biggest baseball fan in the world, and they all ask if he's off his medication. That's always the question. That's always the question that somebody asks me. So we have weird conversations about movies and books and dogs and everything else, just because these folks come in front of me and they talk to me. They tell me what's going on in their life, and we try to find a solution to any problems that they might have. And we try to give them support so that they can move themselves forward. The 4 best days that I have in the court are our 4 graduation days. Our next one is June 3rd, if any of you want to come. We do it on the grand staircase of the criminal division of the courthouse, okay? And we celebrate the people who have graduated from our program. So they're people that have changed their lives. They've stayed clean and sober, they've stayed on their medication, they've moved forward with job training or jobs or housing, supports in the community, and we do these great graduations. The kids down at Kappa come up to sing for them, and they sing 4 great songs for them. One is always, we actually have a theme song, so ha-ha, ladies. We are the only court that has a theme song. If any of you have seen Dear Evan Hansen, there's a song in there called You Will Be Found. We went to see Dear Evan Hansen. My daughter's a musical theater person, and when that song was being sung, I just started bawling. And she's like, "Mommy, pull it together." And I'm like, "You don't understand. It's what I do. It's what we do. We reach a hand out and we pull them back up." So the kids from Kappa always sing that song. We have a speaker. We give them presents, and we celebrate their absolute triumphs. Somebody that's been living under a bridge for 20 years, who now has his first apartment, who has his children back in his life, who has a job after 20 years of living under a bridge. That's pretty powerful stuff. So that's my joy, that's my passion, that's what I do, and that's what I focus on a lot. So, thanks.
I'm gonna join you guys in standing. Thank you. I'm inspired.
Well, you used to do mental health.
I was a DA for mental health, so I'm inspired because I really know how important that work is, and it's important to have a judge who loves that work. And so they're fortunate to have Judge Lazera. I wanted to build upon a little bit what they've talked about what we do before I talk about what I do on a daily basis. We are trial judges, and many of you may know that, but we have students here, and I want them to understand that there's a triangle when you're looking at the courts, and there's municipal judges, district magistrate like Judge Rudsky and Judge Wheatley, where they're hearing things like traffic and landlord-tenant and smaller claims. Then we're the Court of Common Pleas. We're the next level. And as was explained, there's a lot of different variations of what goes on there. Then above us, there are the appellate courts, Superior Court and Commonwealth Court. And then the tip of the triangle is the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. And so in our county, in Allegheny County, there are approximately 43 what's called commission judges. We are elected. Not all states elect their judges. And we talked about our why. Why did we run? What I do on a daily basis in adult family, it sounds ridiculous that you would say adult family, but it's to show the contrast between what I do and what Judge Sizemore does, where she's dealing with juveniles in dependency and delinquency. And dependency is, she'll explain, I'm not going to take your thunder. But what I do is I'm dealing with custody cases. That's when the parents are fighting about who's gonna have physical or other kinds of custody making decisions for the child. I also deal with, this is what is takes up our time, protection from abuse. There's true abuse, there's some horrible things that happen, but we also have people who don't have representation, and it is an easy way to get into court. So people are coming into court on protection from abuse cases because they want their brother out of the house, or they want to get a leg up on custody. But there are true, really horrific things that happen in our county, even just from the stories that you've heard from the judges, that we need those protections. So I have to try to sort through who's telling me the truth. Oftentimes on a temporary PFA day, both sides come in and they're both emphatically telling me this is the truth. So that's challenging. I've never seen them before. It's a very limited hearing. I also deal with things like divorce and support, child support, spousal support. And even though I explain these things, they're not separate. One family can have all of these issues, and trying to make sure that we're listening to them, we're caring for them. And so the approach that I take is I like to have a multidisciplinary approach. I have social work interns that intern in my chambers. I like to engage with the community, so we may work with organizations like Casa San Jose that helps immigrant children, other organizations like the Caring Place. I don't think you can be a absolutely effective family court judge if you do not treat the people in front of you like a whole human being. We only get the tip of the iceberg when they come to court. They only tell us what they want. And sometimes if they're self-represented, they don't know how to tell us. So having the more resources like those places and places like court-appointed special advocates and others who will help to bring us the information, it's crucial. And lastly, I'll just say, I think this is kind of adding on for the first question. Representation is important. When you go into a courtroom and no one looks like you or no one understands you, that is problematic. So that's why I think that we need judges that are on the bench that have diversity in many ways, have lived experience. And so I think in family court in particular, we see many of the litigants don't have attorneys. Many of them are people of color and other socioeconomic issues and all kinds of issues that we need the judges to understand. So I think that if we bring that lens to our work, it makes family court even better. And my favorite thing to do as a judge is talking to kids. When I get to do an in-camera interview, I adore that, because it reminds me, and it always comes at the best time when I'm feeling down, it reminds me why I'm a family court judge.
Nicola, will you say what in-camera interview
Oh,
means?
thank you. And I like explaining things, but so in-camera interview is when the judge typically will talk to a child away from the courtroom setting. I like to do it where they don't even go into the courtroom on custody cases. Sometimes we can't avoid it on PFAs. We have to do it in the courtroom. Typically, we can do that without the attorneys or their parents because you don't want to traumatize the child further. So really getting to have that insight from a kid when everyone else is telling you, this is what Johnny wants, this is how Johnny feels. Kids need a voice. And so not only doing that, but also having people like CASA and Guardian Ad Litems who are attorneys who do that. We need to hear from you. We need to hear from the kids to know, what do you want? You are important.
Okay, and so I do juvenile court, as I alluded to, and as Judge Henry Taylor alluded to. So my day in, day out encompasses two different types of cases mostly. I do dependency work, so that's child welfare, which is essentially when CYF either removes a child from the home or opens a case with a child in the home because they're alleging that there's some abuse, neglect. Sometimes it's for especially with older kids, if there's some extreme behaviors, or if there's truancy in school. Pennsylvania is a wonderful state in that we don't have status offenses for children, meaning we don't punish children in the delinquency system for not going to school, for running away. There are many states that punish those children and treat that behavior as criminal or delinquent behavior. Pennsylvania does not do that. We handle that within the child welfare system. So a lot of what I do on my dependency days is I hear these petitions. It's similar to any other type of legal claim. The agency has to file a piece of paper, document saying what is alleged to have happened, and I, as a judge, have to make a decision about whether it happened or not. And then we do review hearings regularly for families where there are dependent children to see whether the children can return home or whether they may have to stay in foster care or group home. And if they are at home, what services are put in place. So I might make decisions about what kinds of services the family receives. These are all things that lawyers might argue about, and then I would have to make a final decision about what happens. So that's about half of what I do. And close to the other half is delinquency. So these are children who are charged with crimes, but they're charged in juvenile court. In Pennsylvania, our lower age that we charge children is 10. And that may seem shocking. There are some worse states out there. There are states without an age limit, so children can be charged 4, 5, 6 years old. I practiced in DC for nearly a decade. Our lower age of jurisdiction was 8 there, so Pennsylvania's not the worst. We're starting at 10. And we can keep kids in delinquency court up until their 21st birthday. So kids in the United States who are charged with crimes, even in juvenile court, have the same rights as adults, with the exception of the right to a jury trial. But the presumption of innocence and all of the other rights that are associated with being charged with a crime in the United States do apply to children, with the exception of the right to a jury trial. So I will hear those cases, make a determination of whether the child committed the act, and then whether to place them on probation or place them outside of their home. And similar to dependency, we do review hearings. We come in every 3, 4, 5 months, see how the child is doing on their supervision, and whether we can close the case, whether the child can come home from placement, what the next steps are, and what services will be put in place. So that's what I do with 95% of my time. I do a tiny bit of custody. We share the PFA. All of the family court judges share the PFA duties. And so I do PFA sometimes. And Judge Henry Taylor and I also do special immigrant juvenile visa cases, which I won't bore you with now. But it's basically the state court making some findings around the way that children were abused and neglected either here or in their home countries, that they then use those findings to go to federal immigration court to try to get special visas. And that's a lot of what I do. And yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more about characteristics of judges, right? Okay.
Simple, slight nods. You don't have to necessarily throw your hand up in the air. Some surprises? Some things you didn't expect? It's important that we learn things like Amazon's doing some good business on Allegheny County judges. But also all of the different elements and where they fall. It's important because in this country, we have a system that makes 3 branches co-equal. But we don't hear a lot about one of those unless you're directly involved in one of those branches of government. We hear about the executive branch. Lately, we hear a lot about the executive branch. We hear about Congress. We have a general idea about what that works. We have a similar system right here in Allegheny County where you've got an executive and you've got a council. City of Pittsburgh, we've got a mayor and a council. We have an idea of how their duties are separated, how they balance each other. But we don't get a lot of conversation about the justice system, except on some big things that have already trickled out through a whole system that we get a snippet about, if news is even snippets these days. Every single one of these incredible justices, every time they make a decision, it becomes a stack on how we understand the law. When they make a choice to say, this way of using this law is not okay for how we're dealing with housing, with how we deal with people that have a diagnosis, with how families interact, and what we do with our smallest citizens, even that they are citizens and have rights. The choices that they make at the end of the day, the way they write what they decide, becomes how we move forward in law. Really important that we understand those basics. Not all states elect judges. Some are appointed. Not all systems have elections. Some have appointments. Pennsylvania does. And so that means when we talk about democracy, when we talk about how people are making decisions, that's you making the choices, making the decisions on the way people have decided what's important. It's also important that I know we have limited time. And I want to do this all day long because it really matters. But I want to be able to have these incredible women throw back some things to you. Because if you're making the decision who sits not just at this table, but who sits on the bench, there are some things I'd like them to share about. What do you think voters should know? What should people be aware of? And the thing that's really important before I give this microphone away is judges are not to talk about specific political issues. It is very specific. They can't be part of their campaign. They can't say, yeah, we are going to make sure that every single school lunch program has brownies. They can't do it. They can't talk on the issues. They have to talk in a very different kind of way. And I'm going to let them do that because these women are excellent at it. I'm going to shake it up a little bit, give the middles a chance to start. Beth?
Well, thanks. I'm not sure I wanted to start this question. It's funny because when I started to run for judge, I think before I ran for judge, I wasn't sure that the Pennsylvania system of electing judges was a good idea. Okay, what does the general public really know about judges and lawyers and people that run? And so I wasn't entirely sure that that was a good idea. But as I ran, I sort of, and you interact with people, you start to understand that, yeah, it is important to give people the right to pick the people that are going to be making these really basic decisions about their lives when they're in their crisis, right? Family division, you're going through a divorce, or your kid has been accused of a crime, or you have an injury that you're now suing somebody for, or you are the victim of a crime. It's important to have an input into who that person is that's going to be hearing it. So it's funny because as I ran, I sort of saw the value more in us electing our judges. But I think we have to have a very informed electorate. And I think that that's where things usually fail with the judges. And I had the same problems, okay? I became 18 and I had to vote in my first judicial election. What did I look for? I looked for an Italian last name. I looked for people that lived in the city because I lived in the city. And I looked for women, okay? Does that mean that I got the best people? It does not mean that I got the best people because that's all I knew about them. And so to me, the most important thing that you can do is educate yourself about who is running. How long have they been practicing? What have they been doing? And being intentional about it. They say that they've tried 5,000 cases. How old are they and they've tried 5,000 cases? Like, do the math, people. I don't think so. So, you have to look at those kind of things. What is their real experience? I personally, being a trial lawyer, believe it's really important to have people that have trial or courtroom experience. There's no jury trials in the family division, but in the civil and in the criminal, there are. And it's important to have people that know how to try a case, that know how to deal with a jury, that know how to deal with issues of evidence, right? Those are very, very important things to have. And so you should be asking those questions. Do those people have those skills? And quite frankly, when they come before you and talk, are they able to talk to you? And do they listen to you? Because that's, again, very, very important to have. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thanks. Nicola?
This question is right on point for this week, because earlier this week, Judge Bridges and, I don't know if did we introduce you? Yes, we did. Betsy, he's Elizabeth Hughes, they were on a panel with Judge Wojcik, who's a Commonwealth Court judge, and the topic is why courts matter. What I wish is people would understand that it affects your life, your daily life, more so than the national government. Local politics and local things are very important, and in particular, judges. Think about this. Every member of your family can be impacted by the courts. So whether it's in orphans court where you need a guardianship, or you need to figure out somebody's will, or whether it's custody or protection from abuse in family division, and whether it's something in civil where you're gonna lose your housing, courts affect every single person at some point in your life. And I do wish that even in our media, when it's election night, you don't see them talking about the judicial elections. I'm always waiting, because I have a lot of friends in other counties too, and I'm trying to find the information, and they're only talking about this other thing that's going on. Our courts are really, really important. And if your family member ever went in front of a judge in one of the situations that Judge Lazara or Judge Wagner talked about, you'd want them to be not only qualified in experience, but qualified in lived experience and care about human beings. A person who cares about human beings would not be necessarily signing orders in the middle of somebody's impassioned statement about how their life was changed. And so I think while qualifications are important, I think sometimes we miss some of those soft skills. And one of my friends said, one of the easiest way to find out how somebody's gonna be as a judge is to talk to people who saw them practice. Your opposing counsel. If your opposing counsel thinks highly of you because you were respectful, you were diligent, you're a hard worker, if other people in your profession think highly of you, that's important. So I think that what we need to do is people should be encouraged to do more work to figure out who these people are as human beings, and how, because they're gonna bring it on the bench. And so, there are people who are brilliant, there are people who have tried jury trials, but they should not have been a judge. I'm not saying a name, but you know what.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back.
We've got two more folks, and I usually like to conclude with a lot of thank yous, but I'm going to do that really quickly now. I was thinking, what am I going to do? This is really hard. This is a hard time, and I wish we had more time. I said, well, I could just say that Doge took half our time away because we weren't efficient, but I don't even exactly. It wasn't even going to land. But I do want to make sure that, again, we talk to the folks that are in this room, and it's also important for me personally to, as we wrap up, with Chelsea and then with Tiffany, if you all allow me to use your names, since I feel like we've gotten to know you so well, is to thank one of the founders of this organization, and that's Bonnie DiCarlo, because I didn't understand. I was involved in politics. I get this stuff. I'm about electing people. Spent a lot of time working on a lot of different elections. But Bonnie is the one who said, Selena, I work with judges. And I work for judges, and I learn about judges, and you have to do that. And so, thank you.
So I think when we're talking about the qualifications, I would argue, like in any elected position or any other position for that matter, those are the baseline. Mm-hmm. So somebody that's smart, somebody that has legal acumen, certainly need somebody that has the temperament. But I would basically frame this the same way that I would frame my advice on any other person that you're looking at who's running for office. And I would argue that we need to look for people that want to do something and not people that want to be someone. And when I look at some of my experience, and I'll just speak for myself here, in coming to the Court of Common Pleas. I've talked to some of you individually about this, so this isn't shocking, but I've said, in many ways, it's the most dysfunctional organization I have ever been a part of. And here, I have, I say that, I've done every odd job throughout my life, from, the cleaning toilets to whatnot. First day that I came in, and I asked in a meeting, oh, so what's our computer management system? Heads go down. Now, mind you, 25 years ago when I got out of college, I was working on the kind of systems that are so basic, that are not that expensive. We don't even have those. And you go to days where your heat doesn't work. We have jurors in and we're telling them to bring their coats because the courtrooms are 50 degrees. And those are just, some of the symptoms that you see. But I think when Selena was talking about the fact that we have the 3 equal branches, the opacity that is inherent in the judiciary, plus just thinking about the fact that it hasn't been many years in which you've seen a bench that is diverse in many different ways. So even though, say right now, about half of the women on the Court of Common Pleas, or half of the members of the Court of Common Pleas are women, that still doesn't mean that culturally we have changed. And I will share with you one very quick anecdote that spoke volumes to me. Being in politics for many years, I pick my issues. I'm not going to complain about every single issue, and if I do it, I'm going to do it diplomatically. This was also the first place where I've been around many women as colleagues, and I thank God that I have a cohort of colleagues that I can commiserate with and share our experiences. But on the flip side, I've never been treated so poorly by people who have been more veterans, and many of those have been women. And it's not to say that those women were intentionally trying to do these things, but they've been part of an archaic organization, and at times would say, this is how we were treated when we came in, and they didn't see the difference of how wrong that was. So I go back to the point of needing people, and I'm very excited that we have 8 open seats. But I really believe that we need a critical mass. Just like when we talk about women in politics and critical mass theory, we need more people who don't want to just say we need incremental change, but we really, really need to bring this organization up to date to be doing the job that we need to do for people. And to do that, we have to have people that aren't in the government culture of no, where it's just easier to say no, do the same things, keep your head down. And the story I will share is after a meeting, I got pulled aside by another judge. I'm not going to identify who this person is. And I'm not even going to make this gender specific, so you can't even guess there. I raised an issue, and it was, wait, this doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? Another judge said, well, that's how it happened to us. Other judge, when we get out of the meeting, pulls me aside, and she says, oh, sorry, I said she. Well, there you go.
Well, it's 50-50 they can guess.
So it doesn't matter. But she says to me, you just need to keep your head down and keep your mouth shut and be thankful that you have the best job, best pay, and retirement. And this is someone who I had otherwise always thought highly of. And that really characterized what I see as wrong there. Because it's really easy, just like in other political positions, for people to stay right below the horizon, don't make any trouble, collect their pay, and just like holding a title. And that's even more so when people are saying, Your Honor, Judge. I like when people call me my first name, because that's who I am. But we really, really have to be deliberate. And so I think that we need to make sure that the people that we are electing have courage and want to do something and understand that not just for the times that we're in, that it's so important for our institutions, but here in Allegheny County, we have a lot of work to do in our Court of Common Pleas.
Girl.
All right, so I want to take 15 seconds to say I actually left out something really important that I do in honor of the children who I serve every day. Another part of what I do is terminating parental rights, which is tragic. And the happy flip side of that is I get to do adoption. Which is a very joyous day. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say that. But also it segues into the answer, which is, what kind of person do you want making that decision? Right? If someone has to make a decision about whether to legally terminate someone's parental rights, you can't change biology, but juvenile court judges. I have 12 or 13 juvenile court judge colleagues who make decisions about whether a parent is legally severed from their child. And those children can be infants all the way up to the age of 18 years old. And for me, the things that my colleagues said are all very true. So I won't repeat, but what I would add is that you want someone who has had some life experiences. Someone who knows about or who knows people from all different walks of life, who can empathize with victims and defendants, who understand the importance of recognizing someone's pain, but also zealously protecting someone's constitutional rights. Those are unique people, and they're special people, and they're not a dime a dozen. So when you have an opportunity, people in this room who aren't candidates are some of the few people in the county of hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million in Allegheny County, who actually have the opportunity to speak to these candidates face to face. Most voters don't get that opportunity. And so when you get that opportunity, I think it is important to ask not just about the resume, and not just about the GPA, but about where have you been and what have you done. And I have colleagues, friends and colleagues from all over the United States and some from all over the world, and they will all tell you, she's from Pittsburgh, we know, she loves Pittsburgh, right? But I think it was so important for me to get away and leave for 17 years because it changed my perspective on life and on the world, and I think it makes me a stronger judge every single day. So I agree with everything they said, but I would add, you want people who have, been some places and done some things as they make these critical decisions for our neighbors and friends and family members every day.
Your Honors, we are so very honored that you joined us today. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk with you briefly individually for those of you I hadn't met or spent time with before. It's always for folks that I've known, also a pleasure. It's been amazing being here with you today, and I would actually send you out with a charge. You know more than before you came here about a really important thing that's about to happen in just a few weeks. People will be making decisions. Please share what you've learned. Learn more yourself. Be that champion that encourages people to get and be curious about more than the things that flip through on podcasts and influencers. Get deep, learn more, and definitely make sure that you thank and meet everybody at your table and everyone you can in the room. Appreciate it.
And great job, Selena.
Yes, good job, Selena.
Thank you very much, Selena. Yes, hats up. There was one line that I missed on the program, and it should have said closing remarks. So what I want to say is we have a lovely stained glass hanging for each of our panelists. You can see that.
Thank you.
It was made by Marsha Wychick at her site in Verona, PA, who is a very good supporter of our organization. Selena, we have one for you also.
Thank you very much. I have boxes of
There are boxes here that you can put them in. And she does wonderful, I mean, she's just a veteran. She does wonderful work. Also, the stained glass window that we put on the top of the box that we gave to Pat was made by Marsha Wychick. And we hope that you'll be able to find, there are boxes here so you can put that in there. I also want to get a photo of the 4 panelists with Selena and Joanne and myself, with somebody holding the thing. So after we leave, could we all go back where the steps are there and get someone to take our
The
picture?
lighting's better over there.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to the judges. For those of you who may not know, these are all sitting judges sitting up here, as they told you from there. I have one question, 2 questions.
Uh-oh, more questions.
How many judges are there total in Allegheny
Is it
County?
43?
43, right?
43.
Does that include,
That's Court of Common Pleas.
That's the seats.
It does not include the count of senior judges
Right.
also.
That's what I was
Yeah,
wondering.
we have more seniors.
Okay, so there's 43 judges,
Commission
commission
judges.
judges, and then some have taken senior status and
Right.
are still working as judges. So we can look at, there's about 48 or 49 judges. Second thing is, and this is the question, people say to me sometimes, but there's a lot of things that don't go to trial, that they're settled outside of. What percentage would you say in your court are pretty much, do you have any idea, are
If they
settled
don't, we don't
outside?
see them, how?
I think so in criminal division, most of our cases do not go to jury trial. So probably 90% of the cases plead guilty. We might have another 7% or so that are non-jury trials, and then everything else is jury trials. So although April, I'm gonna have my 3rd jury trial next week in
Wow.
the same month of April, so it's sort of changing, but in criminal, it's mostly pleas.
Okay, what about in civil?
So I don't know the stat specific for Allegheny County, but it's always that, 90+% of cases do tend to settle, and it would be consistent with what I see.
Okay. What about family?
I don't have a percentage,
Adult.
but I will say I have thousands of cases that have what's called my suffix, 007, which is a great suffix. And there are cases I'll never actually see, and then I have offenders that come to motions court every week. So if I don't know you, that means you're doing things on your own. There are lawyers that tell me, I don't want you to know me. I want to stay out of your motions court. So I don't know that we have, because we don't have the information system that Judge Wagner talked about, I don't think I can spit out some statistics, but I will tell you there are some people that just keep coming back, and there are others that I never see. They never touch their case even though I'm their judge.
Wow.
Similarly, well over 90% of our delinquency petitions and dependency petitions end on the delinquency side with an admission by the child, on the dependency side with some sort of stipulation to dependency by the parent.
Thank you for those answers. And to me, that means that we even have more of a charge to learn about the people running for judge, because obviously, all the decisions don't go to the jury. The judges have a lot of sway in what happens in their cases. So we need people with integrity, and we need people who are honest, and we need people who care about people, as we've all said that at the panel, and I really appreciate that. The listening aspect of judges, to make sure that you are heard and that you are valued. So again, thank you very much for being here today. Don't forget about our August event, and hope we didn't keep you too late. Thank you.